Something is clearly changing inside the Philadelphia Eagles offense, and after the completion of OTAs and mandatory minicamp, players are making it impossible to ignore. For months, Eagles fans have been asking for adjustments, more creativity, and a system that better fits the strengths of the roster. Now, based on everything that has been revealed throughout the spring, it appears those changes are finally taking shape. The biggest storyline coming out of camp is the impact of new offensive coordinator Sean Mannion. While this will be his first opportunity calling plays, the early reviews from players have been overwhelmingly positive. Multiple members of the roster have emphasized how organized, detailed, and purposeful he has been during the installation of the offense. More importantly, players consistently mention that there is a clear vision behind everything being taught. That vision is already showing up on the field. One of the most noticeable differences is the structure of the offense itself. The Eagles are implementing a more modern, quarterback-friendly approach built around West Coast principles. Fans should expect to see more rhythm passing concepts, improved timing between quarterback and receivers, increased use of play action, and significantly more snaps with Jalen Hurts operating from under center. That last point is especially important. Throughout his career, Hurts has shown success when working from under center, even if the sample size has been relatively small. The coaching staff appears committed to expanding that aspect of the offense, creating more opportunities to disguise plays and force defenses to react rather than anticipate. Another major development involves motion and misdirection. In previous seasons, especially during stretches where the offense became predictable, motion often appeared cosmetic. It moved defenders slightly but rarely created meaningful advantages. What players are describing now is entirely different. Motion is being used with purpose. The goal is to create mismatches, open throwing windows, isolate defenders, and generate easier opportunities for the quarterback. The running game is also evolving. Instead of relying primarily on power concepts, the Eagles are introducing more outside zone principles. This creates a stronger connection between the running and passing attacks, making the offense feel more fluid and less predictable. When run correctly, defenses are forced to respect both possibilities on every snap, creating opportunities for explosive plays. Several observers during spring practices noted another welcome change: more routes attacking the middle of the field. That area was often underutilized at times in recent years, making the offense easier to defend. The new approach appears designed to attack defenses from every area of the field, rather than relying on a limited collection of concepts. Perhaps the most encouraging development for Eagles fans involves Jalen Hurts himself. Hurts has worked with 7 different play callers during his NFL career. Few quarterbacks understand better than he does the difference between an offense that simply functions and one that truly maximizes talent. That is why his comments regarding Sean Mannion have attracted so much attention. Hurts publicly stated that the two have hit it off and that he can clearly see the coordinator's vision for the offense. He also praised Mannion's communication, preparation, and ability to answer questions. Those comments may sound simple, but they carry significant weight. Hurts is known for being measured and careful with his words. When he publicly expresses confidence in a coach's direction, it becomes difficult to dismiss. The changes may become even more important considering the current makeup of the receiving core. Rather than forcing the offense through one player, the system appears designed to distribute the football efficiently across multiple weapons. That could create a more balanced attack, allowing receivers, tight ends, and running backs to all play significant roles depending on the matchup. The goal is not simply to make the offense look different. The goal is to make it harder to defend. After 8 practices and 16 total on-field sessions throughout OTAs and minicamp, there is already growing belief that the Eagles are building something far more dynamic than what fans watched last season. Players are buying in, coaches are seeing progress, and perhaps most importantly, the quarterback appears fully invested in the direction the offense is heading. But while the offensive transformation is drawing most of the attention right now, another major storyline emerged during spring practices involving a newcomer who may have quietly become one of the most important additions on the entire roster. Reports from multiple observers suggest this player consistently dominated throughout camp and may already be exceeding expectations. Could this surprise standout become one of the defining pieces of the Eagles' success in 2026? The player generating the most excitement during spring practices was Riq Woolen, and according to multiple observers who spent time evaluating every session, there was little debate about who stood out the most. While much of the attention naturally focused on the offense and the implementation of Sean Mannion's system, Woolen quietly put together a spring performance that turned heads across the organization. The Eagles made a significant investment when they signed him, him, especially considering that Howie Roseman is not typically known for handing out large one-year contracts. That fact alone suggested the front office believed Woolen could become a major contributor. After what happened throughout OTAs and minicamp, it appears that confidence may have been justified. At 6'4" and roughly 200 pounds, Woolen possesses the type of size that immediately stands out on a football field, but size alone does not make an elite cornerback. What impressed coaches and observers was his ability to combine that physical frame with high-end speed and athleticism. Throughout spring practices, he consistently matched up against some of the Eagles' top offensive weapons and repeatedly held his own. Reports indicated that Woolen successfully stayed with receivers on deep routes, preventing separation and making life difficult for opposing pass catchers. His recovery speed also became a talking point after several practices. On one overthrown deep ball, observers noted how quickly he accelerated while tracking the play, nearly making an impressive recovery despite the throw being beyond its intended target. Even more encouraging was his physicality. Vic Fangio's defense places a premium on corners who can challenge receivers at the line of scrimmage and disrupt timing. Woolen appears capable of giving Fangio additional flexibility in that area. Throughout camp, he demonstrated the strength and confidence necessary to play aggressive coverage, something that could become a valuable weapon once the regular season begins. One specific sequence that drew attention involved a goal line situation where Woolen successfully neutralized DeVonta Smith. Considering Smith's route running ability and experience, winning those types of matchups is not easy. Yet Woolen repeatedly showed the ability to compete at a high level against quality receivers. What may be even more important is what observers did not see. The biggest concern surrounding Woolen entering the season was never his talent. Throughout his NFL career, he has already shown that he possesses the ability to perform at a Pro Bowl caliber level. The question has always centered around consistency. Could he maintain that high level of play over an extended period? During the spring, those concerns rarely surfaced. Instead of seeing the inconsistencies that occasionally appeared earlier in his career, coaches and analysts saw a player performing at a consistently high level throughout practices. Of course, training camp and regular season games will provide a much bigger test, but the early signs are extremely encouraging. For the Eagles, the importance of that development cannot be overstated. The defense occasionally struggled against secondary receiving options last season, while the top cornerbacks often handled primary assignments well. Opposing offenses found opportunities elsewhere. If Woolen can lock down those matchups and provide reliable production opposite the Eagles' other defensive backs, the entire defense becomes more difficult to attack. Considering what top cornerbacks are earning around the league, a one-year investment could end up looking like tremendous value if Woolen performs anywhere near the level he displayed this spring. Another player quietly building momentum is Tank Bigsby. While much of the attention surrounding the running game naturally focuses on Saquon Barkley, there is growing belief that Bigsby could play a much larger role than many initially expected. During spring practices, his acceleration and running style repeatedly caught the attention of observers. Last season, Bigsby averaged 5.2 yards per carry while producing on limited opportunities. Despite receiving only 61 offensive touches, he consistently demonstrated the ability to generate positive yardage and provide a different style of runner compared to Barkley. That difference could become extremely valuable in the new offensive system, where Barkley often relies on patience, vision, and the ability to allow blocks to develop. Bigsby brings a more direct north-south approach. He plants his foot, makes one decisive cut, and attacks downhill. In certain situations, especially within an outside zone scheme, that style can create immediate production. There were stretches last season when the Eagles' rushing attack struggled to find consistency. On several occasions, Bigsby entered the game and provided an immediate spark simply because of his aggressive running style. That ability could earn him a larger workload moving forward. What makes the situation even more intriguing is the creativity that Sean Mannion may bring to personnel usage. There is already discussion about finding additional ways to utilize Barkley's receiving skills while simultaneously keeping Bigsby involved. The possibility of having both players on the field at the same time could create difficult matchup problems for opposing defenses. Imagine defenses being forced to account for Barkley as both a runner and receiving threat while also preparing for Bigsby's physical running style. Those types of formations could become another layer of unpredictability within the offense. As the Eagles now transition into the period between minicamp and training camp, there is a growing sense that several important pieces are beginning to fall into place. The offense appears more structured, Jalen Hurts appears fully invested in the new system, Reek Woolen has emerged as perhaps the biggest defensive standout of the spring, and Tank Bigsby may be positioning himself for a much larger role than many expected. The practices may be over for now, but the biggest questions are still ahead. Once training camp begins and the competition intensifies, will these promising developments continue to build momentum, or will new challenges emerge as the Eagles prepare for what could be a defining 2026 season? One reason the developments from the spring have generated so much optimism is because the Eagles will now spend several weeks away from organized team practices before returning for training camp. That means the impressions created during OTAs and minicamp will remain the final snapshot of the team for quite some time. And right now, that snapshot is overwhelmingly positive. The coaching staff appears satisfied with the progress made during the installation of the new offense. Players repeatedly emphasized communication, structure, and clarity throughout the spring. Those qualities may not generate headlines during the regular season, but they often determine whether a team can successfully execute under pressure once games begin to count. For Jalen Hurts, the upcoming weeks will be important. While the offense is still in its early stages, he now has a foundation to build upon before training camp arrives. The relationship developing between Hurts and Sean Mannion could ultimately become one of the defining stories of the season. The Eagles are not asking Hurts to become a different quarterback. Instead, the objective appears to be placing him in situations where he can play faster, process information more efficiently, and take advantage of a scheme designed to create opportunities rather than forcing him to manufacture them. That distinction matters. When offenses become predictable, defenses gain confidence. Defensive coordinators can anticipate tendencies, defenders react quicker, and explosive plays become increasingly difficult to create. Much of the discussion surrounding the Eagles throughout the spring centered on eliminating that predictability. The increased use of motion, the commitment to marrying the run and pass games, the emphasis on timing concepts, and the willingness to attack different areas of the field all point toward a system designed to keep defenses guessing. That doesn't automatically guarantee success. There will inevitably be growing pains. Sean Mannion is entering his first season as a play caller. New systems always require adjustments. Players must learn new responsibilities. Coaches must identify what works best, and opponents